Are the New Orleans Saints good? And will Justen Jefferson even play this weekend? We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Vikings fans. Welcome in, Saints fans. It's crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Luke Braun. I do Locked On Vikings. I'm here with Ross Jackson, who does Locked On Saints. My good buddy, we do Locked On NFL together every Tuesday as well, so come check that out as well. Got to be my favorite crossover of the year. Sorry, everyone else.
Suck it, everybody.
It's Ross week. This, I'm sure, very clean and professional crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Ross,
Man.
Are the Saints good?
Yeah, great question. That's probably the biggest question that every New Orleans Saints fan is asking right now. They've won 2 games in a row. Can they win 3? Believe it or not, Luke, believe it or not, a 3-game win streak would tie their longest win streak since the 2020 season. That's what's in store and at stake for this game this weekend.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that at the end of the 2020 season? Did that include the Alvin Kamara 6-touchdown disaster game?
Oh, that game? I remember that game. No, it it was like they had that was the year that was the year they had a bye like week 5, and then they came off that bye and ripped off like 5 or 6 wins.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And then they finished on the 2-game win streak, that game against the Vikings, and then followed by a 33-point game against the Carolina Panthers, which is also the last time that the New Orleans Saints have scored 30-plus points in back-to-back games. It was also at the end of the 2020 season.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
End of the Derek Carr or the Drew Brees world. Now we're in the Derek Carr era.
Yep.
I guess that to me is the biggest confusion of the Saints. Is that going all right? It feels like it's going fine, and then it just like falls apart.
Yeah, here's what I'll say. Derek Carr over the course of the first 5 games versus the course of the last 4 games, most recent 4 games, wildly different. And for a couple of different reasons. His performance has gone up from over 186 or so passing yards per game to the first 5. Now he's at like 293. So he's taken a big step forward there. Pressure to sack percentage has gone from 36.6% to 8.7%. So that's pretty big as well. 15 sacks. 15 times he was sacked over the course of the first five games, only 4 times over the last 4 games. So it's been pretty big, right? The run game has kind of been a little bit better, eclipsing over 100 yards. A lot of that having to do with Taysom Hill. The passing game has benefited from that. So you've seen some of the things that have helped Derek Carr, but you've also seen a noticeable tick up in Derek Carr's own production as well.
And I guess that makes sense, right? New to the team, kind of figuring it out as the season goes on. So I don't know if you know, but the Vikings are having a moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on over there right
there's
now.
A couple of things are going on.
How do you even pick what the biggest thing is that's happening for the Vikings?
Right. So, well, here's I guess the questions that I'm sure a bunch of Saints fans have. If you don't know who's playing quarterback, it's going to be Joshua Dobbs. Almost certainly. There is, I guess, an outside shot that Jaren Hall clears concussion protocol and plays, but that actually Sam Ekstrom on the Minnesota Football Party, which is like our local like roundtable show, pointed out that the only person to ever do that, like get a concussion and then play the next week, was Brock Purdy a couple weeks ago, which is
really
pretty controversial. So not anticipating that.
No.
And so it'll be Joshua Dobbs. No idea what the actual Joshua Dobbs offense looks like because that game against Atlanta was a total like Fugazi mess.
Just do that again.
Just do that again. It's
again.
like absolute catastrophe. And then he just kind of ran around. It's just whatever they do, successful or not, it's not going to look like that. It might be something else that works, but it's not going to be that. That's very clearly unsustainable. And they're going to try to do something. They'll try to teach him a little more about the playbook and hopefully run something more normal. But then the other major thing is like who is playing and who isn't, because the Vikings were without Christian Darrisaw last week. He had a groin injury. He suffered late in the week, missed the game. Estimated limited in the walkthrough practice like estimation, which is the only one we know about as of this recording. There's also TJ Hawkinson, rib injury, estimated limited. He finished the Falcons game with that, so I anticipate that he will play. And then the big one is Justen Jefferson, who is now designated to come off of IR, but nobody really expects him to play against the Saints here. Never say never, but everybody's more so expecting him to come back either next week against the Broncos, or we have a bye right after. Or, yeah, we have the Bear. Then the week after that against the Bears. And there's a bye in there as well. So somewhere in that.
So
his window has just started.
Yeah, so they activated his practice window. He's got his 21-day window open, but it doesn't necessarily. It's more like they're starting the process of getting him back more than it is like, oh yeah, he'll be ready this weekend. Yeah,
so they asked O'Connell about it today in a presser on Wednesday, and he was like, that would be aggressive, which isn't to no, but it's that would be aggressive. So, and they're not gonna. I mean, they're in like active contract negotiations with him after the year. There's no reason to really rush him back, especially considering the team just ripped off 4 wins in a row without him. But we don't need to be insane about this.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And look, I mean, this. And isn't KJ Osborne also dealing with a concussion as well?
He is concussed. Super do not expect him back.
But,
that was a nasty concussion. So I'm not expecting him back soon. It's going to be Jordan Addison and like guys. Brandon Powell is also there, and then they're literally into their practice squad dudes. We have a second-year player, Jalen Naylor, that everybody was really excited about. And then he got hurt in camp, and he's been on IR since. He's been activated to the 53-man roster now. So we should see his debut as probably de facto wide receiver 2 after Addison, considering how many other people are hurt. But this is a banged up Vikings team cobbling together something recognizable with like dudes that many of which did not make the team. And no Cam Akers means a lot more Addison, I imagine. Or Madison, Madison. Yeah, Madison and Addison and Hawkinson.
Yeah, I know.
And Jefferson.
Yeah. Sorry, one time when we were talking about this thing, we had a PJ Williams, a DJ Swearinger, a CJ GJ, and then we had JT Gray. So there was CJ, GJ, PJ, AT. I don't know. Oh yeah, now there's AT. Jesus.
Yeah. So now we have CJ Ham, Justin JJ, KJ, TJ, and JA.
these are things that we find interesting and no one else finds interesting.
It's like crazy that they've accomplished anything with just how banged up and depleted they are. I mean, if you asked me before the season, like, who are the 4 guys that cannot get hurt for this Viking season to be successful? The Vikings just won a game without 3 of them. And that was Kirk Cousins, Jefferson, and Darrison. The other guy I would say is Danielle Hunter.
Jaron Hall. Oh, okay, gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense. All right, so it's gonna be really interesting because, like, look, I mean, you look at the New Orleans Saints secondary right now. Marcus May is playing extremely well. Tyrann Mathieu playing very well, but I wouldn't say extremely well, right? As long as he's not matched up with like a 6'6" guy in the end zone, he plays great. But like, when they get those mismatches and things like that, it just comes to play in safety. Paulson Adebo right now is allowing the second lowest passer rating amongst all corners in the NFL that have played at least 250 snaps. Marshon Lattimore is in the top 15 when it comes to that top 10 in forced completion percentage. And Paulson Adebo is at the top of that same list, which includes about 59 guys at forced completion percentage. So like this secondary is ready. And so if there's going to be guys out there like Jordan Addison, who deserves a lot of respect, and a lot of guys that are kind of finding their way or just now coming back or getting their first action, that might lean a little bit towards the Saints' strength. Yeah. And I mean, Addison has broken out and is having this like superstar rookie season. Yeah, he's been awesome. But it really has been him. The other guy that should be mentioned is TJ Hawkinson, and how the Saints will handle TJ Hawkinson, where the offense really runs through him, whether it's the run or the pass or screens. I mean, he has a crucial load bearing role on everything. So how the Saints want to attack him will determine a lot about that game plan. Yeah. And in terms of how guys match up, we have quite a bit of that to talk about coming up, as well as some actual predictions. This crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Vikings and Locked On Saints brought to you by friends at DoorDash. Luke, I got hungry earlier, man, but I didn't feel like cooking. I had too much going on. I had to record this crossover. We had to, it's a busy day. We got a lot going on. Didn't want to spend any time standing over the kitchen, standing over the stove, all that stuff. So I ordered Trilly cheese sticks. It's great cheesecake spot down here in New Orleans. Got to go and get it. They have a vegan option for little nerds like me. All right. I'll put it out there, but they've got great selections and a lot of local spots. You're in New Orleans, you got to have the local spots. Same thing in Minneapolis. So you want to make sure you're all covered. You're going to want to head over to DoorDash today. Get in on that action. We're going to help you out here. We're going to get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more at DoorDash today. Just download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23. That's LOCKED23, subject to change. Terms apply. That's 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order at DoorDash. Download the DoorDash app today. Enter that promo code LOCK23, subject to change. Terms apply.
Keeping it rolling on crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, brought to you by PrizePicks. And hey, after you're done listening to this, make sure you go subscribe to the respective YouTube channels, Locked On Vikings, Locked On Saints, and check them out on Fridays where NFL Kickoff Live is going on. That will preview that upcoming weekend's games, talk a little bit about whatever horror show we see on Thursday Night Football.
Oh, my goodness. No Justin Fields. It's not going to be great.
It's you know what? I'm about to go stand for a Josh Dobbs team. I'll stay in my glass house now.
Let's go.
I mean, look, Joshua Dobbs did well, and maybe that's the first matchup we should talk about. Joshua Dobbs did well. He was very mobile. And when things are going wrong, when your calls aren't coming out right, when you are your protections aren't getting declared right, when communication issues are happening, plays bust, being able to escape the pocket and run around is like the thing that gives you a floor, right? Like that's your safety net. So I guess the first matchup question that I have is, how do the Saints deal with mobile quarterbacks?
Great question. Not well. Who else? You mentioned Joshua Dobbs get a lot of running last week. You know who else did a lot of running last weekend? Tyson Bagent. Tyson Bagent ran 8 times for 70 yards. It's an 8.
Oh my God.
That's an 8.8 average per rush. Now, you know how it goes. Quarterback scramble averages are usually up there.
Right, because there's one 30-yarder in there.
Exactly. But here's the thing. 70 yards, right? The longest run was 20. So he got out there consistently.
So he got out there.
Yeah. And just to put it in even further perspective, 8 rushes for 70 yards for Tyson Bagent. The Saints ran 27 times for 87 yards. So about 17 more. So here's the deal. The Saints right now lack structure in their pass rush. They all kind of try to get after the quarterback. They all try to get after the quarterback. And because of that, it opens up those lanes in the middle of the field, middle of the offensive line, all those things, and then gives that escape route. And then because the Saints play so much man coverage,
that was my next question.
Everybody's back is turned. So that's what ends up costing the New Orleans Saints a lot when it comes to these mobile quarterbacks. They're not losing games because of it, but they're certainly not winning games as comfortably as they should because of it. That's for sure.
Got it. And so, I mean, we're pretty new to Joshua Dobbs, so I can't really tell you a lot about his style, strengths, and weaknesses. We haven't known him that long. He will have been a Viking for 12 days.
And he's about to start his 11th game. You know what I mean? Start his 11th game.
Right. And he started a whole bunch for Arizona, of course. So let me flip to the other side of the ball then and ask my other big matchup question, which is, how do the Saints deal with blitzes? This one's weird. If you aren't familiar, the Vikings are very weird on defense. They either rush 3 or 6. 4-man rushes are for nerds. They lead the league by a mile. They lead the league in 6+ rushes. They just send the house all the time. Almost half the time they're sending those guys. And they also lead the league in rush 3, drop 8. So we're either sending everybody or nobody.
That's just wild.
And it's a lot of simulated pressure, right? You line up 7 guys on the line of scrimmage and then drop 4 of them out, and it's actually a drop 8 coverage. So how do the Saints deal with that kind of thing post snap? But also, is this a team that you want to send the house against? I mean, I'm so used to the Saints not being the team to blitz because of Drew Brees.
Great question.
Are they the team you blitz now or no?
It goes a little bit both ways. I do want to say real quick, just for additional context for the Saints folks that are listening and watching. When you think about what Luke just explained about sort of those pressure fronts, think about the Saints on third down. The Saints on third down will have their 3 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers sugaring the A gaps, and the 2 safeties over the outside.
So they're lining up everybody,
and it's some drop, some rush. Like that's very much. But think about that like all the time.
They just live there
for the Minnesota Vikings. Derek Carr has performed well against blitzes, has not performed super well consistently under pressure. So that's going to be the big thing. He's really good at diagnosing where a blitz is coming from and knowing where to go with the ball because of that. His first read percentage has ticked up quite a bit over the course of the past couple of games because of exactly that. But when he gets the pressure, that's where you can see the passer rating come down. You see completion percentage go down. You see even adjusted completion percentage go down, but you see his average depth of target go up. So that means he panics a little bit, right? He just guns the ball downfield when that pressure is coming. Screw it, Rashid Shaheed's down there somewhere kind of attitude.
And me and Madden.
100%, 100%. And so it's like that's a little bit of what it is. So it goes both ways. It's like there's value in blitzing because if you get the pressure, it's going to disrupt the timing of the Saints offense. But if the pressure doesn't get there, and thanks to guys like Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, who have stepped up big time in pass protection out of the backfield, they've done a good job keeping that at bay here over the recent weeks. So that's been a big piece of it. Let me ask you, from the opposite perspective, when you think about the New Orleans Saints pass rush, right? The Saints don't blitz a lot. They go 4-man front quite a bit. They blitz on third down situationally to send, Demario Davis. Sometimes they save that towards the end of the game, like what you saw against Chicago last week when he had that sack fumble that helped to seal the game. How do you feel about the Vikings offensive line against a Saints defensive line that doesn't use a lot of supplemental pressure?
I think it depends on who plays. In particular, I think it depends a lot on if Darrisaw plays. Because David Questenberry, Dalton Reisner hasn't been here for a long time, but the Vikings have had, this is bizarre. We have not had this in a while, but they've had one of the better pass protecting lines in the league this year.
Wow.
They've just been winning. And it's crazy because they were pretty strongly below average last year, and they waltzed into the season with the same group of people. Week 2, they signed Dalton Reisner. He goes in for an injured Ezra Cleveland, plays well too, and the Vikings trade Ezra Cleveland and say, we're good with this guy, actually. So it's just been like success after success. But you lose Christian Darrisaw. Their backup tackle, Oli Udoh, got hurt in the preseason as well. So they're going with David Questenberry in like year 13, and that depth is starting to get past the point where we're happy about it. We'll see if Darrisaw with that groin injury plays. In terms of those 4-man rushes, I'm going to guess there's a lot of stunts.
Yes.
That has been tougher with the Vikings, although I will say in particular, that's one of the things that Dalton Reisner gives them that's better than I think Ezra Cleveland made that mistake a bunch and Reisner didn't. So hopefully that can keep things together. But a lot of it too is that Cousins, when we had Cousins, the ball would get out, drop depths would be very consistent, and that would help against those blitzes. They had their blitz answers, like you could get to that hot when you've got a veteran quarterback. The same as with Derek Carr. When you have somebody that's just been around the block, it's not flashy, but you can get to that check down and see if somebody can run after the catch. With Dobbs, I have no earthly idea what happens. Is he going to break out and run? Is he going to heave something stupid? You get him under pressure, flushed out of the pocket. You can see some crazy Mahomes crap, or you can see the dumbest interception you've seen in your life. Like a whole bunch of different things can happen. So it's just impossible to predict. Like this, of all of the games I think that I will cover this season, this is going to be the hardest one to predict.
Oh,
just in general. I have no idea what happens on those blitzing third downs, and that's what's going to drive this game.
Yeah, that's a keen observation and keen point there. To the Derek Carr, or to the getting the ball out perspective, Derek Carr over the past 4 games gotten the ball out 2.38 seconds. Before that, he was holding it to about 2.5. So you could see that he's like getting the ball out a little bit quicker. That one little, extra.
That's a lot. That 2/10 is a lot.
That's a big adjustment. So it's going to be interesting to see how Dobbs ends up kind of where he falls on the spectrum of that.
And before the show, you mentioned Olave as like a matchup guy.
Yep,
right?
I was about to say my next big matchup is the Saints wide receivers up against this Minnesota secondary. Like, what's your perspective on that?
So the Vikings have done great against a lot of these guys. They had one total breakdown where Keenan Allen put up 2 bills on them.
Sure.
Where the Chargers just did a great job of executing a downfield offense quickly. Like an actually just incredible job of doing that. It becomes more of a matchup of, can Josh Metellus tackle Alvin Kamara? And that's the thing that the game ends up coming down to. Or, can Jordan Hicks get off a block from the tight end out in space and go make that tackle so that it, 2nd and 7 doesn't convert and turns into a 3rd and 4, and then we can blitz the crap out of you there.
Yeah.
That's the texture of every Vikings game.
Man, that is chaos over there.
That bizarre.
Is just chaotic in like the best way possible. Like, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like, I love football. That's chaotic football. And I love chaotic football. So, all right, that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, we let's try to parse out this chaos and exactly what needs to happen for each team to win. That is what's coming up next.
Look, you want to be prepared, right? You want to be ready for the next big weather event. You want to be ready for, supply shortages, things like that, stuff that's kind of outside of your control. You want to try to have as much control of it as possible. Now you can do that thanks to our friends over at Jase Medical. With Jase Medical, you can get a bunch of life-saving antibiotics with the Jase case. You can get different daily medications for up to a year's worth of supply and everything. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you can get that could have a big time positive impact on your family. And it's all thanks to our friends over at Jase Medical. We want you to go to jasemedical.com right now to receive your 12-month supply of your daily medication. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON as well for a discount. Verified customers had this to say about Jase. I'm thankful for this service. Supply chain issues forced me to cut pills in half just to have my medication. I've ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I ordered an antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. And we recommend this for you as well. So if you or someone you love would like to have some peace of mind for having that year's supply of any daily medication, go to jasemedical.com and see if it's offered for you. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your purchase.
All right, Ross. Enough stalling. We gotta figure out what's gonna happen in this game.
All right.
I think we've sort of driven at it. I think whoever counters pressure better gets to win this game. And whether that comes in the form of, Derek Carr doing what Justin Herbert did. If I'm the Saints, I'm watching that Chargers tape and saying, can we do any of that? Can we pull this off? I think that's the tape that solves the Vikings. And I don't really think anybody else, even the Chiefs, had their struggles with it. I don't think anybody else has been able to pull off offense in that way. And the Vikings have gone a string of some pretty rough quarterback play, not even close to Justin Herbert. So we'll see if Derek Carr can do that. And I think, the young quarterbacks the Vikings have faced have had a way harder time than the guys that have a little bit of experience, at least just game managing. Like managing quarterbacks can survive here. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It feels to me like on both sides of the ball, that's the big thing. This one is going to be determined in the first 2 seconds of every play in the trenches.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And I have a thing on my show that I talk about all the time about like how football is really about stacking moments. It's very rarely you got to play the full 60 minutes, but it's very rarely about what happens throughout the entire 60 minutes. It's who had the one big turnover at the wrong time, who had the big touchdown at the right time, whatever it might be. It's about moments. And I think if the Saints can find, or the Vikings can find, 1 or 2 moments at the right time, I think about the amount of pressure that or the amount of blitzing rather that Minnesota likes to do. One screen pass at the right time that properly counters that blitz. Get the one block on the perimeter, and then you get the opportunity to pick up more yardage. Or the one well-timed Joshua Dobbs scramble on a 3rd and 12 or something like that. Those are going to be the moments that are going to decide this game. So one of these teams is going to have enough control to control those moments. And I think whoever comes out stacking, like if we took the top 10 best plays from this game, whoever's got 6 wins this game. Like that's the way that I really look at this, which isn't always the case.
Well, so here's a stat for Saints fans. Then the Vikings are a bottom 5 turnover differential team in the league. They have given away 12 fumbles. The fumbles have been an absolute disaster. It was a lot worse in the beginning of the season. I think they had 9 in the first 4 games, or maybe the first 5. And so they've sort of chilled it out a little bit, but it's still like ball security has been absolutely a big issue for the Vikings. So when it comes to, who's going to make that big play, a lot of those early losses where the Vikings started, 0-3, and now they've ripped off 5 of 6.
Right.
But that 0-3 start was fueled basically entirely by turnovers. So if I know it's not like the most groundbreaking analysis ever to be like, don't turn the ball over and you win the game, but like, don't turn the ball over and you win the game.
That's the type of game that this is going to be, though. Like, it's going to be that tightly contested, I imagine. The Saints right now, number 2, are tied for second in the NFL with the Chargers, by the way, in turnover. I'm sorry. No. They're tied with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They trail the Chargers and the Bengals in turnover differential. They're at +8 right now. And they got 12 interceptions on the season. And that's huge for them because, look, this is a team that had only 7 interceptions last season, a franchise low. Right now, they've got 8 guys with interceptions, including Paulson and Adebo, who's got 4 of them things right now. And so I think that's got to be the big thing. Like, to me, it's
Didn't they all come in one game?
No. He's had 3 in the last 2, and then he had 1 early on in the season.
Oh, okay.
So he did have 2 last week. He did
2
have
in a game. Okay.
Yeah, he did have a 3rd takeaway last week, though.
Oh, that's what it was.
Punch out. Yeah. With the fumble.
Man,
what a game! What a game that dude had. And he's had like a good couple of weeks. Can he keep it going? This is a game where you want to see that, right? Like, this is a game for the big names. This is a game for the big names for both of these teams, and the big playmakers, right? Whether they are established playmakers or just the guys that go out there and make the plays. Like, that's what this game to me is going to come down.
Yeah, the Vikings don't have their playmakers. That's
right. That's why I say.
So it's kind of a next man up game.
There and make those plays.
Yeah, who can become a playmaker? And one of the most underrated playmakers, I think, in the entire league is, and definitely the most underrated guy in the Vikings is Josh Metellus. He's not a household name. He has been the big nickel. He's the 3rd safety, so he's the big nickel. And he is playing basically nickel. They go in big nickel more than they go in regular nickel. And he has been all over the field. He's been instrumental in the run. He's forced turnovers. He's the guy that gets in and recovers the fumble. He's the guy with the wherewithal to make the heady play, big pass breakup, big tackle. He just does all the little dirty work things right. And it's made, it's endeared him to everybody. He was voted unanimous captain this year. Awesome. Big special teams presence as well. Although I don't actually know if they even have him playing special teams anymore because his on-field from scrimmage role is so important. He got an extension this offseason.
Yeah.
To me, he is a key to every game in really unsung ways. And I don't think I talk about him enough on Locked On Vikings. But it's exciting to see exactly how he's going to show up because it's always something different. Sometimes the big TFL, sometimes it's just deconstructing the right block or playing contain properly. Sometimes it's, nailing down on some, basic over the middle from, or lining up on the line of scrimmage and then backing off into a middle 3rd zone. So he's just like bailing out 30 yards and just like an insane person because the Brian Flores defense is wild.
and if he's playing that nickel role, that means he's going to draw Chris Olave a lot and he's going to draw Michael Thomas a lot. Because both those guys play a lot. And both of them play a lot.
If they're worried about it, it'll be Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy, when they go in normal nickel or dime, like when they have 3 corners, Byron Murphy slides to the inside. And then there's actually the 3rd guy that comes out has actually kind of been a rotation / competition thing between Andrew Booth and Mekhi Blackman, a couple of
interesting
young players. Yeah, it's the personnel on the defensive secondary is really interesting. Sometimes they'll come out in 4 safeties and run dime that way, and then they'll like blitz 4 of them and back off a D tackle. And you're like, what is happening ever?
Sounds very familiar. Sounds very familiar, actually. It sounds a lot like Dennis Allen. Like there are some pieces of that.
It's wild.
Where you're watching, then all of a sudden, like Alontae Taylor is blitzing out of the slot, but Colin Saunders, the 300-pound defensive tackles in like the middle of the field playing.
Yeah, like playing a hook zone. You're like, what
is happening? What are we doing?
Well, and the reason for that too, they probably have similar blitz rules where if you're mugging both A gaps, whoever the center turns toward is the guy that backs off.
Yep.
And then offenses know that, so they'll turn the protections toward the bigger guy.
Yep.
And make the big dude play the hook zone. But
yep.
it's very weird stuff. And when the Vikings needed a D coordinator, they did interview Ryan Nielsen. So they were looking at the same stuff, and Ryan Nielsen's doing the same stuff over in Atlanta as well. So they were clearly interested in this particular style.
Gotta love it. All right. What's your prediction? What are we doing? What do we think?
Chaos, man. I don't think I can. Do you want me to say an arbitrary number just to have one on record?
No, we definitely don't have to. This is a game. I'm with you on this one. This is a game where I have no idea where this is going, but I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fun. Vikings Saints week is always a good time in US Bank Stadium. Do you know if the Saints are going to rock the color rush? Are they going to be that kind of team again?
They haven't done it yet this season, so there's a chance that it happens.
They like to do that with the Vikings.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll get an idea of what the mannequin in the locker room is dressed up like, and that's usually that's on the Friday practice, and that's when we usually find out what the uniform is going to be. So I'm crossing my fingers for some color rush, though. We'll see if they do it.
Very, very weird stuff definitely is going to happen. And I'll say this on every crossover. Don't touch that dial. The Vikings can lead by 3 scores or trail by 3 scores. That game is coming down to the wire. They just have that magic about them. Don't touch that dial. So for Ross Jackson and Locked On Saints, I'm Luke Braun. I do Locked On Vikings. Always encourage both fan bases. Go listen to the other show. Scout the enemy a little bit. Saints fans, you're welcome to come on down. Listen to whatever we've done this week on Locked On Vikings, and of course, vice versa. See you guys all next time.